us in the chat, and that way we have record of your attendance. For those of you who will be requesting CEUs, we will send this information over to Outreach and Engagement. Rita Bruner is our contact person over there. So when you email her for your CEU, then she will already have record of your attendance. So let's go ahead and get started. So we are being very respectful of your time. So welcome to the field supervisor orientation. I'm Bonnie Rinks, Director of Field Education. I'm joined today by Brandy Watson and Grace Brown. They're also on your screen. And then Maddie Piat she's joining by phone just to see how this is done. She'll be our grad assistant next year. So if you ever have any questions about field education, you can reach out to any of us and we will be happy to help you. So a couple of things we wanted to talk about quickly is just to remind everyone that we do have a concentration, not just in mental health, that's what our MSW is, but in clinical social work, but we also have a certificate in addictions. The classes are completely online. So if you have an MSW, you have your LCSW, but you want to get your addictions certification or you're working toward your addictions license, you can come back and do that. The classes are online. If you need an internship, we have a way to work that out so that you can use some of the hours in your previous internship, but then you can also work to get the requirements completed for an internship after you've already gotten your master's degree. If you have questions about that, you can contact Dr. Quentin Maynard.
I have.
I'm sorry, yes?
I want to get your guys'.
Oh, if you don't have your speaker muted, go ahead and do that because we are recording this. But if you have a question, just go ahead and either type it in the chat feature or if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and then go ahead and ask that question. But if you're interested in the online advanced studies in addiction science, you can contact Dr. Quentin Maynard. He's the director of the MSW program. His information is on this screen at the bottom. If you forget that and you just want to reach out to us, we can also get you connected to him. So this is our second year of having a fully online master's program in addition to our traditional program that we've had for over 30 years. It launched last summer, and it actually has gone over very well. So we have, in addition to our traditional MSW program, we have a fully online program as well. If you're interested in that, or if someone in your agency is interested in that, they can also contact Dr. Maynard. Again, his information is here, but if you can't get that information, you can contact one of us and we'll get that information to you. So basically, why are we doing this orientation or this training? Some of you have already had interns several times, but you always come back to this training, which is really nice to see you. But we hope it helps clarify some things and also helps ease some stress because we know that taking interns can be stressful. So we want to turn our students from students into professionals so that they can take over the care of our communities. And field students are provided with opportunities to apply what they've learned in the classroom so that they can gain and improve their skills in an actual practice setting. And so when a student finishes their internships, they should be ready to enter the profession. And so it's our hope that this presentation today will help clarify any questions you might have about what that means for you and your student. So we're teaching our soon-to-be social workers what social workers do. So you have a responsibility. You kind of assist the student in mastering their competencies, increase their knowledge, values, and skills of what they've learned in the classroom into the practice setting. Because as we all know, what we read in books is not necessarily how life goes. And so when you're actually working with real life clients, things are not always textbook. And so internship is an opportunity for students to learn this and learn in a practical environment under your direction. So we're kind of bridging the world of being a fully student to being a full professional. So some of the things we're going to be covering today is we're going to tell you a little bit about how we place students. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that because your students are already placed. We're going to talk a little bit about our different roles. We can't have a training without talking about our accrediting body, the Council of Social Work Education. We'll go over the competencies and then the practice behaviors, which are on the student learning plan, and then what to do if a problem occurs. And then we'll just cover some frequently asked questions, and then we'll open it up to you if you have other questions. And we hope to get you guys out of here in 1 hour so you can get back to your actual jobs. So one of the things that we have experienced is if you have supervised for us before, you used a system called Tavera. And we're still using that system. However, Tavera has gone through some updates and some changes, and it's now called the Experimental Learning Cloud, formerly known as Tavera. Eventually, they'll drop the formerly known as Tavera off their title, but right now it's still the same. The website or the program that we use, it'll still look very much the same. The colors are going to be a little different because ELC is now green, where Tavera, I believe, was turquoise. So we've transitioned into Experimental Learning Cloud, ELC, but it's still Tavera and has the same features. They're updating it about every 3 months, and it's gone about like most updates go. Great ideas, but in practice, they may not always work exactly like they are supposed to. So it's been a little bit challenging for us, but we've managed to navigate the first couple of sets of changes, and we expect another set of changes probably in about a month. I think it's the September. There's nothing that you have to do, so you can still click on the link and get into Tavera, or excuse me, ELC. It's almost identical with just some color changes. And then as changes roll out, we'll try to keep you informed and keep the students informed of those changes. They're doing it incrementally and not all at once, which is better for learning, I think. So hopefully it'll be a fairly smooth system. So now how do we place students? We're going to quickly talk about this so that you know how your students got to you. But students fill out a field application. And then part of that application is they look through our agency list of agencies that we have agreements with, and the populations they're wanting to work with. And they give us basically a preference list of up to 5 agencies. We ask them to put those agencies in order of their preference. And we try to work with their first preference first. And so that's kind of how they get to you. Now, if their first preference, they say, oh, you know what? All of our social workers are on maternity leave right now, so we won't be able to take an intern in the fall, but we can take one in the spring. Then we notify the student, we move on to their second one, et cetera. So we also ask them to check populations that they have an interest in working with, in addition to their agency preference list or their agency wish list. And that way, if they get into a situation where they have listed agencies, but they've interviewed and the agencies have only accepted 1 or 2 students, then we can go to their population list and go, well, they're still interested in working with addictions or children, and we know agencies that work with that population, so we can help them navigate toward those internship sites. And then also we ask the kind of things that they're interested in doing, whether it's faith-based or corrections, maybe community-based or schools. As well, because we tend to get to know our agencies pretty well, and we can help students navigate that. Then they turn it into us and we start working with you. That's when you get emails from us saying, hey, we have 75 students who are interested in doing an internship with your agency. How many of those do you want? And then you tell us, we'll take all 75, which makes our life a whole lot easier. So we appreciate you guys doing that for us. So the reality of it is, it's probably more like, that's great, we'll take 2. So we have to let students know about that as well. So when we get the information back from you, then we can give students the permission to contact you, send you their resume, and ask for an interview. We ask that students use their USI email because that's the one that we can use. We can't use personal emails to send you a resume and a cover letter, basically requesting an interview. And then we want them to interview with you just like this is a job. For some of our younger students, they may have never interviewed for a professional job before. So we want them to get that practice in before they actually graduate. So they should come to the interview appropriately dressed, paying attention to what the agency does, ask good questions, answer the questions appropriately. And then after the interview, if the agency decides this student is a good fit for us, offer the student an internship. And so then we have some additional paperwork that's then completed for the student to be fully placed with you at your agency. So it's that bit of paperwork is done in formerly Tavera, now ELC. And all that paperwork has to be in before they can start their internship. And I checked with Grace and Maddie yesterday, and I think we only were waiting on a couple of students to turn in some paperwork for fall. Is that right, Grace?
Yes, there's like just one or two now, and I think they were placed later in the year, so
Okay.
they were sent out like last week or something.
Okay, so we're in really good shape, and we're going to get that information from those students hopefully this week or the first of next week. And then, of course, classes start on August 18th, and students can start their internship that week. So they should be in contact with you prior to that, so that they know their schedule when you want them to show up, that sort of thing. You should also take some time to kind of orient students a bit. I know some agencies do more of a formal orientation during the summer before the internship starts. But the student should know where they should park, what the dress code is, what kind of policies and procedures your particular agencies have, that kind of thing. And then if your student has not contacted you, because classes start in about a week and a day, so let us know if you have not heard from your student, and we will also reach out to them. So who's who? Of course, we know that there are students, and there are faculty that work with the students, as well as you, the supervisors and the task supervisors. So we don't just place our students and then kind of forget about them. All of our students work with a specific faculty, a faculty liaison, or a seminar instructor in a seminar class along with their internship class. And we keep those classes pretty small, somewhere between 10 and 12 students, so that each faculty liaison has maybe 10 or 12 students that they work with in the classroom setting. And those faculty liaisons are also the ones that will be doing their midterm and final evaluations. If there's an issue with a student or a question that you might have, you can reach out to the faculty liaisons because they probably have that answer pretty quickly. If for some reason you don't remember who that is or you haven't heard from them, you can always reach out to one of us and we'll help you with that. So who can supervise a student? This is probably a question we get most frequently. Oops, hold on. Let's go back. Let's try it again. So if you have a generalist student, and a generalist student would be a BSW student, either first or second semester, or we also have traditional MSW students who do not have a BSW, who have to complete a generalist internship before they can move on to their clinical internship. And so a generalist student can be supervised by a BSW with experience, an LBSW, an LSW, or an LCSW. Some students think that they always have to be supervised by an LCSW, and that's true if it's a clinical internship. But if it's not a clinical internship, then they can be supervised by an LSW or an LBSW. Now, the clinical students, that's the master's or the MSW2 internship, that's the clinical level. That's both fall and spring semester of their clinical year or their final year. They must be supervised by an LCSW. And then if we have a student who's also seeking the OASIS certificate, which is the addiction certificate, they have to be supervised by an LCSW with 5 years, and an LCAC with 5 years of experience. The good news is in our area, we actually have a lot of LCSWs who are also LCACs. So that has not been difficult for us, which has been great. Some programs in other areas have more difficulty with that. But now, those of you who have a student, the student does not have to be Velcroed to you. You can assign a task supervisor to work with the student as well. Now, if the task supervisor does not have a social work degree, you must also work with that student as the social worker. So, for example, if I am a child and adolescent therapist, and I also want my intern to get experience with someone, some adults, then I might assign them to someone who works with adults, but I still have to be responsible for their overall learning. But that person who they're kind of assigned to work with adults might be that task supervisor. So I would continue to remain their supervisor, but the student would also get experience with working with a different population. So the task supervisor and the social work supervisor really do need to communicate with each other so that you know exactly what the student is doing and that they're meeting their learning objectives. Not everyone has a task supervisor, and that's okay. Some students get confused by this. And they say, well, I don't ever see my supervisor. It's like, but you're with a task supervisor and your supervisor is providing your supervision and working on making sure that your overall learning is being completed. So just be aware of that. And you don't have to have a task supervisor, but sometimes it works out if you do. So the MSW2, all MSW students must complete a clinical internship. That's either in their, if they have a BSW, that will be their only internship in the master's program because we do have advanced standing. If they do not have a BSW, then they also have to complete a generalist internship before they can begin their clinical internship. It is for clinical students to be provided with opportunities to demonstrate their competencies at the clinical level. It's an advanced practice, so you're basically training your clinical colleagues because once a student graduates with their MSW, they're eligible to sit for their LSW actually in the last semester of their final year in the program. So they'll sit for their LSW and then they'll work toward their LCSW for 2 years under direct supervision. So the clinical internship, it does provide a kind of a mix of journalist and clinical activities, but with the emphasis being on developing those therapeutic skills, developing, learning evidence-based practices, putting those into practice, making sure that they are learning how to behave as a clinical social worker. And then all clinical students must be supervised by an LCSW. So the students also have a role in this. So they're not just passive participants. When you are doing supervision with your student, they shouldn't just be sitting back and going, yeah, everything's going great. They should have some things that they need to do. They need to come in prepared with a list of things that they want to explore with you. Some of the tasks that they've completed during the week, any kind of feelings that might come up when you're working with clients, because again, this is their first opportunity in many cases to work with clients. And so they might over-identify with a client, or they might have feelings that come up if you have a client who is a child who maybe has experienced abuse or neglect. That can have an impact on students. And so we encourage them to talk to you about these kind of feelings. And we want the student to also exercise critical thinking skills, and they can process those with you during during their supervision. We also tell students to look at their student learning plan during supervision to make sure that they are accomplishing the tasks and the behaviors on their student learning plan. So the student learning plan should be used basically in supervision about what they have said they were going to do to accomplish the competencies and making sure that they are working toward completion of those skills. We also focus on the NASW Code of Ethics. We met with an upcoming student. She'll be starting in the fall in the traditional cohort. And so we talk about, as I said, we will talk about ethics until you are sick of talking about ethics, but we will still talk about them. So by the time a student graduates, they should know the Code of Ethics frontwards and backwards and practice it in their practice. The student should be open to feedback, including corrective feedback, because supervision isn't just about cheerleading the student, it's also about molding them and shaping them to become competent social workers. So we want the student to be open to that. And as a supervisor, we have the responsibility to give feedback to the student about things that they are doing well, and then also things to work on to improve their skills. One of the things that, because we do a lot of training on supervision, and one of the things that I tell agency people that I'm working with about supervision is we actually learn skills when we're just on the edge of the competency. So if I'm working with someone who is just about to master a specific practice, then I want them to start practicing that. And they're not going to be great at it at first, but then I want to give them feedback on how they can improve that. And so it's not all cheerleading, but it's not all you're doing terrible. So it's kind of a balance between cheerleading and propping people up, and also encouraging them to move beyond their comfort level and venture into some areas where they are developing those competencies or developing those skills. We tell students and faculty, as well as our partners in the agencies, our supervisors, to set a specific time each week for supervision. It's just easier to stick to a schedule if it's like Tuesday at 1 o'clock or Friday at 9 o'clock, as opposed to let's get together sometime this week. So try to schedule it, and we tell students to stick to it and not to blow it off. And then also we want there to be good communication between the faculty liaison. And sorry, I have a phone call coming in, and I will hang that up. Quit calling me. Thank you. It's my husband, I can say that. So I've lost my train of thought now. Okay, so we want there to be good communication between the agency supervisor and the faculty liaison, so that everybody knows where the student is at that time. So what they're doing. Just stop calling me. Sorry. Sorry, my husband really wants to get a hold of him. So we want good communication. So don't hesitate to reach out to your faculty liaison. So, and just so you know who those are, at the BSW level, we have James Aiken, Dr. Veronica Huggins, Phyllis Stone, and Heather Woods. And then at the clinical level, we have Dr. Kathy Elbers, Patty Lair. And if you have been around for a long time, you know that Dr. Elbers and Patty Lair were former directors of field here at USI, and they love field so much they still teach for us even after their retirement. Then we also have Janet Lutvalian, Brandy Watson, who's here with us, and then Elizabeth Fallon. And then in the spring semester, we didn't have these folks up, but the spring semester is when our traditional cohort does their first generalist internship. And we have faculty that you may have met before. Dr. Kaylin Alvey teaches that seminar class, as well as Michelle Lovelady Smith teaches one of our classes as well. So you will probably also see those people at some point in the spring semester. So Brandy, do you want to go ahead and take this, and you tell me when to advance the slides, and I'll find out why my husband was trying to call me twice in a row.
Yeah, that's one of the new technology advances that we're experiencing out here is they have now linked our phones to our computers. So we don't always get a choice on when a phone call shows up on our computer screens, since they're now linked in electronic. So we're getting used to that too, guys. in amongst ELC changing and Blackboard, which is the delivery system we have for our curriculum to our students out here. This slide talks about the faculty field liaison and the seminar instructor's roles. So they will be working to conduct the seminar class with the student and help process some of what's happening in field, along with being able to pair some of their academic learning with that practical experience that they're having. You will receive an email with an introduction on who is the faculty field instructor from the institution, from USI, probably in that first week of school, if not the second week, introducing themselves. And then you'll also get communication with them throughout the semester while the intern is placed with you, because they'll be meeting with you at midterm and at final to help collaborate on what the grade is going to be and how the student is doing on their competencies. This person will also be your communication with the university if things are not going well in terms of the internship, if people aren't showing up on time, if they're not on track for their competencies, then that is the role of the field seminar and the faculty liaison. They're both of those positions. That's the role of that person in order to work with you. And if it needs to, then it'll come on up to Bonnie and I. Or if you're struggling to get the instructor to call you back, you can always reach out to Bonnie or I about that as well. Go ahead and advance to the next slide there, Bonnie. Okay, again, this talks about the field instructor and the supervisor's role. Again, you're wanting to make sure that they're on track to meet the CSWE competencies. You're going to know what those are. You're going to already have met with the student in the first few weeks of their internship and set tasks up with them. Those are the actual objectives on what am I going to do to practice this competency at ABC agency, right? So that is a partnership between you and your student where you can help them direct their actual tasks to learn the competency towards activities that are available in your agency. Now, if you find at midterm and final that those things change, because sometimes we think opportunities will become available, and because of funding or other priorities, the task may change throughout the internship. You can always get with your field seminar instructor, that faculty liaison person, and they can help to talk you through the process of changing some of those tasks and how to document that. But one of your primary roles as their field instructor, the person that's out there supervising the student, is to make sure that they're on task to complete their learning plan. And the field instructor is going to help to make sure they're on task with that too. They're going to be communicating with you regularly throughout their time here. They get to meet with the student in the class. So they're going to be hearing about things that are happening in field, and they may reach out and talk to you sometimes or assist a student in reaching out to you if they're struggling. Because remember, for many students, this may be their first professional experience, and they may be anxious about approaching you kind of as their boss. So the field instructor may be helping the student to kind of come up with the right words or encouraging them to reach back with you with certain concerns that they're seeing. Again, we're trying to help that student build professional capacity so that they can be our coworkers, right? We also do some reviewing of the timesheets, but you guys primarily do the signing because we don't know when they're at your agencies, but we're making sure that they're on task to get their hours in and the appropriate amount of hours. So the field instructor is able to see the timesheets as they're being signed. So you may occasionally get, hey, there's 4 or 5 timesheets and we're almost at the midterm. Do you mind signing those? Because sometimes they can get hung up at the student level where they're not turning them in. And I, having worked out in the field, know that we get super, super busy and we don't always think to pull up the timesheets in ELC and get them signed. So you may get a, hey, do you mind signing those student timesheets every once in a while from the field instructor too, just as a reminder. Formal supervision in field classes, in the seminar class, is all about the personal growth of the students. So it's all about how do we work together as colleagues to support each other as we're out here in the field and we're meeting with clients and we're trying to learn how to be social workers. Again, we have a really strong emphasis on the code of ethics and just professional social work standards. And we try to help the students learn to not only get constructive, honest, and direct feedback from that instructor, but also how to give it to each other. Because it's very important that we all work as a team when we're out there in the field. And sometimes we have to grab a colleague and talk to them. So we're introducing that concept of giving feedback to our colleagues, to the students within the seminar classes as well. So all of those layers are beginning to connect. Can you switch the slide for me, Bonnie? Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to talk about, because students again are very eager sometimes, or sometimes they're a little overwhelmed, and they're not always sure how much they can ask for and how much not to ask for. So you may find yourself in a position where you have to draw like some boundaries with the students, because we get students who are eager. Well, I'm not working and I'm going to school. Can I be here 30 hours a week, even though I only have to be here 20 hours a week? You do not have to allow the student to be there 30 hours a week. If all is required of them is 20 hours, you can draw a boundary with that student and encourage them to do some work-life balance, or to do some volunteering, or you can even set them up with some additional opportunities outside your agency if you want to do that. But there is no expectation that you're going to take an enthusiastic student and spend all of your time with that individual. The opposite can also be true. We could have a student who's overwhelmed or has maybe some health issues going on, and they're struggling and asking for a lot of allowances from you. It is a-okay for you to say, this is a professional environment, and our clients and the services and the opportunities that I'm giving you need you to be present for those things to happen, right? And I understand that there's health issues going on, but you need to work with us on this. So this is just talking a little bit about some of the things that we've heard feedback-wise coming back from some of our from you guys out in the field. And we just wanted to make sure that we let you guys know we've got your back, and we want you drawing these boundaries with the students, because this is how they begin to learn how to function in a professional environment. So it's very important. And if a student is having a hard time hearing a boundary, that's an ideal use of your faculty liaison to help reinforce that boundary. We want to know when those things are happening, because those are good discussions for seminar classes, and they're good discussions for us to have with the students, so that they can see everybody in the profession is backing them up to help them learn and hear what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. So there's just some examples on there. You guys are going to get that slide. Sometimes there's some duality in roles that we get sometimes too. That's another one to watch out for. We do have more and more students who are working and also attempting to do an internship. And sometimes there can be a duality of role if I see a client in multiple locations, right? And so that's another good boundary. Hopefully the students are bringing those to you, but we've had a few examples where a student did not, and things were discovered later on. So we just want to kind of bring those to your awareness. These are some red flags to watch for, and some just reminders where boundaries with interns. Blurring professional and personal boundaries. Oftentimes we want them to be a part of the team. We want them to participate in things. Students may push to get a personal number from you, and you may give it because it's something that, hey, if you're going to be late, can you text me and let me know? But if they're texting you on the side, telling you about their personal life, asking you to meet up for drinks after work, that's crossing a little bit of a boundary there. And sometimes we could be like, I want him to be, because we want to hire this person, and we can get ourselves in that situation where we maybe want to be more friendly than we need to be. But this is just a little red flag to keep this in mind. Other is sharing confidential information or personal stories excessively. If you notice that happening a lot, or you find yourself trying to explain something and then getting pulled into a rabbit hole because students will keep asking and asking and asking, it's okay to draw that boundary with the student. Sometimes there is ignoring or minimalizing ethical concerns, or the opposite, students may blow something way out of proportion because there's been a good discussion in a field class and now they're overly focused on it and they're wanting to really hit you with the topic a lot. It's okay to say, those are great questions. Why don't you write those down? Sounds like there's some more discussion in your field class to have. And here's the part I can give you with that, right? So we just want to bring up some of the things that we've seen kind of expressed to us that have come up out in the field, just so that you could have some thoughts about how you might handle those if you happen to have that with a student. Students also sometimes may need check-in times between formal supervision, especially if a teachable moment comes up. So if you do have a setup where you're kind of the LCSW or the BSW and you've got a task supervisor who's with your intern a lot, and the task supervisor brings something that they're struggling with, or the field instructor comes to you and says, the students brought up a few concerns. I've encouraged them to come do this. There may be necessity for some check-ins between times, especially if issues arise. But even if they don't, sometimes there are very quiet students, may be suffering a lot, and they may not be telling anybody. We see that a lot in the journals that they bring back in the field classes, that they have all these concerns and they're not sure how to talk about them sometimes. So doing more check-ins sometimes allows opportunities for things to come up that may not normally come up. Go ahead, you can switch it, Bonnie. Do you want to jump into timesheets or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, you can go ahead and keep going.
Okay, so this is the way the timesheets kind of look, and you will get them from the student. It kind of shows you here on the screen where you're going to be signing on their hours, but you can see where it's breaking down the hours by the types of opportunities that they have available to them, as well as the days of the weeks in which those hours were produced. So they have to accomplish, for a generalist internship in the fall, 150 hours. For the clinical internship, 300 hours in the fall and 300 hours in the spring, right? So these timesheets are their documentation that they're completing that. The other thing that has to be on this timesheet is that 1 hour of direct supervision that they're getting, which should always be denoted hour to hour, week to week to week on the timesheet. So those are the things that you want to look for. They should be getting, if they're in their BSW internship, 150 hours is about 15 hours a week, 10
About
hours,
10.
about 10 hours a week for the BSWs. For the MSWs, they should be getting about 20 hours a week, unless they're part of the OASIS program, because I know I've got a few people in here that have people getting their LCAC, and then they will be getting about 25 hours a week. If you are noticing chronically that they're not getting that amount of time, or their field instructor is noticing that, you may get some communication from the field instructor, or you are welcome to communicate to the student, hey, it looks like you're falling a little bit behind on time. Are there other days and times that we can maybe look at getting you in for your internship to make sure you're getting the time that you need? Okay. There's a couple of extra things to note on the timesheets as well. If you have the setup where you're kind of the BSW or the MSW who is supervising and you've got a task supervisor, both of those people can be assigned the timesheets. That way you could still have oversight and know that the student is getting the appropriate time in. And the task supervisor, who may actually be setting with them, can also look at the timesheet and make sure they're accurate for the amount of time that the client is showing up, especially if you're not in the same building or around all the time, to know that those are accurate. It allows that accuracy. The last piece is the field instructor. So whoever seminar class the student is in is also monitoring those timesheets and will be assigned the timesheets so that they can keep track that the student is on track to complete their hours appropriately. So CSEWE competencies, why don't I let you take that one, Bonnie?
Okay, sure. So as you know, we're an accredited program by the Council on Social Work Education, which we are very proud of. And by the way, we are working on our self-study now. So if you call us sometimes and we're going, and we actually probably need mental health services, that's probably the reason why, is because it's very akin to a JACO accreditation. And so we have to, it's a lot of stuff. So we're working on that now. But CSWE, make sure that we are providing excellent education to our students. They update the competencies about every 7 years. The last one was 2022, and that's the one we're working on right now, is working on our self-study to reflect the 2022 competencies. Field education, it is the signature pedagogy of social work education. This is where the rubber meets the road. Everything that they have learned in class, they apply in their internships. We are trying, because they will be going out into the field as practitioners when they graduate, once you have them. So when you have them this year or this semester and next semester, they graduate in May and will start looking for jobs. So we work very closely with CSWE to make sure that students gain the knowledge, practice the skills, and have the abilities to practice as competent social workers once they finish our program. If you're so inclined, you can also look up CSWE at the website here and look for the EPOS, and that will tell you the competencies of social work education. If you want that information, we can also send it to you, but their student learning plan actually outlines the competencies. So there are 9 competencies: demonstrating ethical and professional behavior, advancing human rights and social, racial, and economic and environmental justice, engage in anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion in their practices, engage in practice-informed research and research-informed practice, engage in policy practice, engage with individuals, families, organizations, and communities, assess individuals, organizations, groups, and communities, intervene with individuals, etc., families, groups, organizations, and communities, and finally evaluate practice with organizations, groups, and families. And I will tell you, probably number 9 is the one that students struggle with the most, but they may ask you for some guidance on that. And when we're talking about evaluation, it can be small things or it can be large things. If you're using CANS and ANSA, that's a practice evaluation. Students might be able to look at that to see about the clients that they maybe have worked with or have been involved with, how their scores change. Some organizations also use not something like CANS or ANSAs, but also use a reporting scale from clients that they're working with. How did you feel about this session? Are things going well? Did you get what you needed? Those kinds of things. So students will probably ask questions about number 9 the most. Your student learning plan, this is kind of what, whoops, sorry guys. This is what they look like. Get back to that screen. And for each competency, they have tasks or behaviors that they have to meet. For example, this is competency 1. Make ethical decisions by applying the standards of the NASW Code of Ethics. Then they're going to tell us how they're going to do that. And these tasks should be kind of SMART goals so that we can look and say, oh, okay, did you read the NASW Code of Ethics when they completed that? Did you put that into practice? How you put that into practice? And so for each behavior under the competencies, they tell us how they're going to accomplish this. And so if you think about it, it's kind of like a case plan or a treatment plan for learning, because all of us have written case plans, all of us have written treatment plans with the clients we work with. And this is kind of that roadmap that students use to make sure that they're meeting those competencies. They start working on this student learning plan probably the second week of the semester, and it does take some time for them to complete it. They will be asking you about things, about how they can meet this competency. And while it's the student's responsibility to write it, but we do ask that supervisors and agencies basically kind of provide an opportunity for, here are some tasks and activities, or here's some things that you will be doing, and then the student can put those things into the student learning plan where they would be most appropriate. They will complete the student learning plan into the ERA, ELC, and Experimental Learning Cloud. I just want to tell you, it's not my favorite title. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but anyway, ELC, they will get feedback from you, and you do have to sign off on it, as well as their faculty liaison. So when they are writing their tasks, we ask them to make them SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound or time honored. That way, it's not so ethereal that we don't know what they're doing. We do give them information on how to write SMART goals, but I know in your practice you have written case plans that have to be SMART goals, as well as treatment plans that also SMART goals. So they may need some guidance on that. And because it's going to be good practice, because they're going to have to do this when they actually get out into the world and actually start practicing. So here's some examples. I will review the NASW Code of Ethics, agents, and the agency policies at the beginning of the semester. Well, that's not very specific. It's not by September 1st. It's actually the first part of the semester is anything before, the end of September. I will attend any kind of trainings the agency has throughout the semester or throughout the internship. I will follow the agency dress code daily. I'm dressing professionally. Utilize agency technology in a responsible, ethical, and a professional manner. And so those are things that might be appropriate for them to use for ethical and professional behavior. Attend trainings. Go to, if you have a morning, I know in medical settings, there's usually a morning MT meeting or multidisciplinary meeting when they discuss their clients or their patients that are in the hospital or in treatment. Those kinds of things would be appropriate to put into their student learning plan as well. And then what you have to do as their supervisor is to evaluate how they're meeting those goals. And this is the rubric. So it's basically an NA, which is they haven't had time to demonstrate this, up to 5, where they are consistently demonstrating this. Now, we know when students first start out, they're probably going to have like 2s and 3s because their learning behaviors, it's beginning to develop. But by the end of the semester, we want them to be competent. They should have 4s and 5s and be able to demonstrate that they have either mastered this or they are approaching mastery. NAs are okay at the first part of the semester, but by the end of the semester, they should not have any NAs on their student learning plan. If they do, they need to, they've never had an opportunity to do this, then they need to find something that they do have an opportunity to do. Because as we know, we can say we're going to do something, but then life changes and we don't have the opportunity to go to court because, court has canceled or whatever. So they need to find something that they can do to meet that goal by the end of the semester. So as a 1 through 5, now one of the things that agency supervisors are most concerned with is I don't want to give them a bad grade. And you don't assign their grade. The faculty liaison actually assigns the grade, but they do utilize your scores to help inform them of what they're doing in the agency. So if you have any questions about that, we're happy to discuss that with you. So, and I think I already said this, but
I just want to make sure and give you a 10-minute warning too, Bonnie, because there's a lot of slides left.
Well, I've already addressed this. So 2s and 3s, we expect to see those at midterm. By the end of the semester, we expect to see them mastering those competencies. Okay for NAs at midterm, but by the end of the semester, they should not have any NAs. And I will go along pretty quickly from here on out to make sure you guys get back to your actual jobs before the end of your lunch break. Make sure that you meet with the student before the midterm and final evaluation to score the SLP so that when you're meeting with your faculty liaison, they have the scores in front of them. Assessing professional skills. We will also ask you to kind of assess their professional skills. It's a little additional thing at the end of the SLP. We're talking about their growth, and you'll assess areas where social work skill growth is needed and plans to ensure that growth. So it's not part of the SLP. I mean, it's on the SLP, but it's not a score that you give them. It's basically we ask you if they're meeting those or if they need improvement. Scoring the learning plan continued. Again, same thing at final. We do want them to have 4s and 5s by the end of the semester if they're meeting those skills. Schedule, when you're working with your faculty liaison, we ask that you kind of set aside about an hour just in case there are questions. But typically 30 to 45 minutes is what those take. And so that's just something that should not take longer than that. Yes, please score the SLPs before the meeting and sign them. So all signatures have to be done electronically through ELC, formerly Tavera. Got it right that time. So we do check these, and they actually can't continue unless you have signed them. So it's kind of one of those stacking things. You have to sign it first, then it goes to the faculty liaison. So make sure that you are looking at those and signing those. So USI faculty actually assign the grade, but we do look at the scores to help inform that grade. So a 1 is not a D and a 5 is not an A. And it's a snapshot of where the student is. So I hate to go through these so quickly, but if you have more questions, we will absolutely answer those questions. But here's the thing, if problems occur, we are here to help. You are not in this by yourself. We are partners in educating students to become professionals. So we ask that if there is a problem, whether it's not sticking to a schedule or not dressing appropriately or whatever, we ask that you address it with the student early, and that can be done in supervision. Most students will correct as soon as they know that there's an issue. If they don't, we ask that you notify us, and we ask that you do it quickly so that we can help facilitate corrective behavior. The last thing we want to learn is that there's been a problem all semester long, but we just now hear about it at the end of the semester because there's no opportunities for us to help correct that behavior. So contact your faculty liaison. They may also contact us. We will do things like it's called a performance improvement plan with a student, where it's kind of like a written performance improvement plan that you would get at a job, because again, we're also teaching students how to be professionals. Some of the reasons why we might expect a phone call and that be unsatisfactory, violating policies or not utilizing their time wisely, or not showing up consistently, or showing up late, or leaving early, or things like that. But we also want to make sure that they're not behaving in an unethical manner. They're not being physically or verbally, inappropriate, that they're not violating university, any kind of alcohol or drug policy, or the agency, any kind of agency policy. And of course, any ethics of violations to the code of ethics, we want to know immediately. We do have a field manual. It's posted on our website. You can go there and get a copy of it. If you have a question, feel free to download it if you want to. You can always call us as well. And again, we want to know sooner rather than later, because our goal is to turn students into young professionals. And we can only do this with your help. So
5-minute warning.
5 minutes. Okay. So here are some quick answers to a lot of questions that we tend to get. BSW, the fall semester, 10 to 12 hours a week for 150 hours. They do have to go till the end of the semester. So even if they have 160 hours, they still have to go to the end of the semester. So that's why we say, don't let them do 30 hours if they're only supposed to do 20, because they do have to continue through the end of the semester. BSW is in the spring. BSW2 in the spring is 300 hours. That's 20 to 22 hours per week. Again, till the end of the semester. The MSW1 generalist is a spring semester placement. It's 425 hours. That's about 28 to 30 hours a week. There's usually not many students who go over that too much, but we want to also make sure that they're meeting those minimum of 28 hours a week. And then the clinical students, they are both fall and spring semesters. It's a minimum of 600 hours, at least 300 each semester, 20 to 22 hours a week roughly, unless they're also seeking the addiction certificate. That's 700 clock hours, so they actually have to do about 23 to 25 hours per week. So when can they do their internship? When the university is open, when they're in that semester. If the university is closed, then they cannot be in their internship, and that's actually a liability issue for the university. We can send this out with the dates that the university is closed. And so anytime the university is open, they can be there. Some people have asked about if they can do weekends, and the answer is yes. The university is open on the weekends. We just don't typically have classes. But some people are fortunate enough to be able to do an internship over the weekend.
Inclement weather counts for that too.
Yes.
So if the university closes down, because we ran into this last winter, during the winter time, if the university closes down for snow and an intern may even be at your agency when the university closes down and they're notified, they may have to leave their internship and go ahead and go on home because the university is no longer open.
So we hope that doesn't happen much. Usually it happens in the spring semester. That's when we tend to get most of our inclement weather. But students will get a wave alert. And we will send out a message to the students if the university has to close for some reason. Usually it's only 1 or 2 days, fortunately, unless we get crazy ice storms. What happens if a student does not complete all of their hours? So we want them to finish by the end of finals week. We technically don't count finals week, but they can go into finals week if they need to complete hours. So they have to have all competencies and all hours completed by the end of the semester, or they get an incomplete. And they must complete that before they're eligible to continue in the program. So we do stress this to students. So if you have a student that's had some issues and it looks like they're not going to complete their hours or their competencies, let us know as soon as possible so we can work with that student. Can students attend events or agencies outside of the times that they're interning? Yes. We actually encourage students to gain a diverse experience. So if you're an organization that belongs to like a council, and everyone who has works with homeless population gets together and they meet, it's important to bring students along to that. You can also tell them to go visit other programs. It's really the only time that students get a chance to do that is when they're an intern, because you don't get to do that when you actually work. And so you can give lots of opportunities for students to do different kinds of things.
Bonnie, can I break in for just a second? Because we're down to 1 minute, and Sean asked a really good question on here that other people may be curious about. He is asking if he has an intern, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong in understanding your question. If he has an intern who is an employee for his agency, are they able to work for us, not counting internship hours, still able to work for them? Did I understand that correctly, Sean?
On snow days or on
Yes.
days that you're closed,
Okay.
can they not count internship hours but
Right.
be an employee?
Correct. That is correct. So just to reiterate, if they're your employee and the university closed for inclement weather or Labor Day or whatever, but they're your employee and you're open, then yes, they can actually be in their job. They just can't do any internship if the university is closed. So you are correct.
And we've got another good question. Someone's asking, say I'm a supervisor over the intern and I'm their primary person, but I go on vacation for a week. Am I able to give my intern to some of my other fellow,
Yes.
And the other people I work with, and have them shadow them while I'm gone that week?
Absolutely. And that happens all the time. So yes, we don't want the students to not be able to do their internship. So you can absolutely assign them to someone else. even if it's that person would essentially become a task supervisor or a task instructor, even if it's just for a week. So you absolutely can give them another person to shadow, and they can continue their internship. So those are good questions.
I think that was it for the questions, but we are at the 1 o'clock hour.
We are.
And
Unfortunately,
we can hang around if they have questions after.
Yes, we will do that. Just really quickly, we will send out the slides. What we have not covered are basically some frequently asked questions. We also post frequently asked questions on our website. So some of the questions you might have are actually in here. But really quickly, I will just tell you, if you have requirements like drug testing, TB testing, etc., students are told that the agencies may request these. If the agency pays for them, great, but students are told that most of the time agencies do not pay for these. So just be aware of that. If you need to log off, go ahead and log off. If you want to hang out for a few minutes and ask specific questions, we will hang out with you for a little while as well. Again, if you haven't logged in to give us your name and your email address, please do that in the chat feature before you leave, because that's what we will send over to Outreach and Engagement, so that when you notify Rita Bruner of your, and I'm going to pull her name up here, when you notify Rita Bruner that you would like to have your CEU sent to you, she already has a list of people who actually attended. So make sure you use that chat feature to give us your name and email address. And then thank you guys for attending. We appreciate it so much. And if you have questions, please let us know. We'll hang out here for a few more minutes so that if you want to stay on and ask us questions, we'll do so. But Brandy, you can go ahead and stop the recording. And thank you guys for coming today.